Hey guys, welcome into another video. I am going to be explaining in detail how to create an expert level prompt so that way you advanced users of Synthflow are able to actually go over a guide that has worked for clinics, that has worked for law firms, that has worked for many other businesses using voice AI. So I want to make sure that you guys know exactly how to prompt your AIs and how it can benefit you for the future. So let's go ahead and get on straight into it. Okay, so now that we are inside of the prompt on Synthflow, I want to make sure that you guys understand how things work around this. So basically, this is an AI, a voice AI that is serving for a clinic, right? So it is the receptionist of the clinic essentially. And we're just going to be going over the prompt itself. We're not going to be doing actions, deployment, configuration. We're not going to be looking at any of the voices or anything like that. It's just solid prompting and how you guys are going to be getting better and better at it. So if you haven't seen the videos that go over the beginner or intermediate prompting, you should definitely go ahead and start doing that before watching this video, so that way you can get some sense of understanding of what's going on. Right now, moving forward, I start off with a simple custom greeting. This is nothing really advanced, but then again, here we lead into a little bit more of an advanced type of system, right? So basically, what do I mean by advanced? So by advanced, there's a couple of things that separate intermediate and advanced. Now, making everything simple is usually not the case when you're doing an advanced build, just because you want to make sure that you get the right information every single time. So what I mean by that is, let's take gathering name for an example, right? So I say start by asking for the caller's first and last name. If both names are not provided, politely repeat the request until you have received the full name. When they provide their full name, also make sure to spell it out. Do not proceed to the next step until you have this information. So right over here, then I say confirming the user's name, which is like a title. Say something like, great, let me confirm your name by spelling it out. For example, if the user says Leila Campos, you would say perfect. So your name is L-E-I, and it would spell it out. Is that correct? And then it would go in and say, if the user confirms, proceed to the next step, called gathering date of birth. Now, there are a couple things here that you need to take note of, but first things first, I always say this: make sure that you always use the phrase say something like. If you use this phrase, it's going to give the AI a lot of liberty, right? A lot of liberty to be able to reply to anything that they said before and then go back into the topic. So this is super crucial, so that way the AI is not static and more human-like, right? So you want to make sure to always say something like, okay? So that's one thing. Now, the other thing is, I mentioned do not proceed without spelling the first and last name of the user and having them confirm it. Now, this is obviously if you're pulling up data from an API source or, a knowledge base or something like that, where you really need for their name to be spelled out correctly. What I do here, what you just read from here on out, is they tell me their name, and then the AI asks them to spell out their name, right? The user. And then the AI goes, once they spell out their name, the AI is able to spell out their name again, so that way they could confirm that it is correct. And this all happens in the span of like 15 seconds or something like that. So it doesn't take that long either. But it's super crucial if you want to have the right information every single time. And we could even test this with a very difficult name, which I have already done a couple times. So that's good. That's how you basically include a couple of steps into the prompt that makes it a little more seamless essentially, and a little harder to break. So another thing would be, do not proceed without gathering the first and last name. This way it can't go into the next step, and by steps I mean these, right? These right here are steps. So if I say do not proceed without gathering the first and last name of the user, and it's basically announcing it as like do not proceed into the next step, just like I said right here. So pretty much, if the user confirms their name, right, you can proceed to the next step called gathering date of birth, which is right here, right? And here on out, we say the same thing, right? Right here, ask for the caller's date of birth. If both names are not provided, politely repeat the request until you receive the date of birth. Do not proceed to the next step until you have this information. And then I give it a little bit more of like context, right? Keep in mind, guys, you're literally talking to GPT right now. So if you wanted to learn something, just tell it, right? So I say, once you receive the date of birth, make sure to format it as the following: MMDDYYYY, right? So once you gather the user's date of birth, make sure to confirm it with them and ask if it's correct. If it is correct, then proceed to the next step called find patient ID. So as you can see, I'd go over the same format, the same thing. If it's correct, proceed to this step. If it's not correct, do not proceed to the next step. But here's one key thing that I did not mention before, right? Which is, if you ever get cut off or interrupted, make sure to go back to saying the statement you were saying in the past. Now, I'm sure this is already going to be something that Synthflow will implement themselves, but as of now, I found it very useful to just add it onto the prompt after every single step, or as a note in the bottom of the prompt itself, just because right now, if the AI gets interrupted, they just move on to the next step, which is not really what you want happening. If the AI ever gets cut off, you want them to go back to what they were saying before, so that way you could easily go ahead and proceed, right, with the same process. So that's very important. Now, going into another topic right here, so reason for visit, right? You'll ask the user something like, we'd like to know the reason for your visit, just let me know which one of the following fits best. Or is it a follow-up or a new patient appointment? Here on out, it's basically going to go ahead and choose whether it's a follow-up or a new patient appointment. And from here on out, obviously, you could do this with APIs, but essentially you're going to be able to gather the reason, right, of their appointment, right? So if it's a follow-up, then it would go ahead and say it's reason ID number 4, right? So it wouldn't gather follow-up, it would just gather the number 4 for it, if that makes any sense. So I give an example right here. If they choose the follow-up, the reason ID would be number 4, right? So moving on, after you gather the reason, then go ahead and recommend a physician or office for the user. And these are all hypothetical, these are just examples. If the user agrees with the physician you've chosen, then proceed to the next step called selecting a physician. And then, of course, do not proceed to the next step if the reason for visit isn't gathered. Now, I go over, and as you can see, I always say the same thing right here. Now I go over and say selecting a physician. Pretty much, it goes over the same thing that I mentioned earlier. It's going to go and select a provider, right, as you can see right here, and then it would match it into an ID for that provider. So for example, if they choose Johnny Thomas, it's going to be the provider ID number 28. So you could teach the AI stuff like this in an advanced prompt, just because it's a GPT. Like I said before, it can understand everything that you are pretty much telling it, as long as it's in an organized fashion, right? Now, you can even teach it things like, here's a list of providers and offices. Please remember to refer to them as providers, not doctors, except for IV office, nurse visit, blah, blah, which should be called by their respective names as they are non-person entities. So that basically means that if there's an IV office here as an example, then it wouldn't refer to them as a provider or a doctor, it would refer to them as an IV office, right? So you could teach it stuff like that. And then not only that, you could also go ahead and give it like math equations if you really needed to. So that way it can do that within the actual call itself, which is another thing that I've seen people do. But these are all relatively simple. So right here, I also provide an appointment booking. So that way this is very easy and neat, right? I did connect it to an API, so it's basically able to gather the appointment slots just like Synthflow does for you already with the actions itself. And then I'm also able to insert the date and time, so that way, you know, you could choose how many days you offer, so on and so forth. But essentially it's super simple to do. Now I want to go over something that might be very important for you guys. So as you can see right here, I have created an SOP template for you guys to follow. Now it's not completed entirely, I want you guys to know that, but if you have access to this, you'll be able to just copy and paste off of here, gathering name, gathering consent, right, to record a call, talking style, appointment booking, who you are. You know, it goes over a lot of the valuable things that you could add within a call, so that way you guys format your own AI callers the correct way within voice prompting, right? Which is not very easy to do. Not to mention there's other factors just like emotional prompting, which they also replied to, and you know, things like that are also very important to take a look at. Okay, everybody, so that is just one of the examples that I could teach you with advanced prompting. However, I want you guys to know that there's many different variations, there's many different alternatives that you could take with prompting. This is just mine. This is my opinion with this, and this is what has worked for me. Okay, so I want you guys to take that into account. Now, I am going to leave the document that I showed you guys down below, so that way you could use it yourself for your business. And I'm also going to leave a Skool community link down below so you guys can join up. And in there, I'm going to be obviously teaching you guys even more. It's basically a community full of people that are doing voice AI and voice AI only. I make sure to qualify everybody that goes in there. And not only that, I have a free course that you guys could watch specifically on Synthflow, so that way you guys can learn a little bit more on that too. Not only that, there's also templates in there that you guys could look at of many different builds that I have made and you guys can get for yourself. So really looking forward to see you guys in there, and please subscribe if you want to go ahead and see more content like this. Yeah, I will see you guys soon in the next one. Peace.